You're listening to a 10 Minutes on Tuesday podcast for Propel. I'm your host, James Hacon from Elliotts. Thank you for downloading and enjoy. So I'm here with Ian Leigh, the recently appointed MD of Thai Leisure Group, who operate 15 Thai restaurants across the UK. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
I think for those people that maybe don't know about Thai Leisure Group, it'd be great if you could maybe introduce the company and your brands, because I think that the overarching company name of Thai Leisure Group maybe hasn't got a huge amount of notoriety yet, but it's definitely something to come in the next year, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure thing. We actually only introduced the name as a bit of a top level company a year or so ago. So yeah, I wouldn't expect many people to have heard of us. There are, as you say, 15 restaurants in the group as we stand, and I'll tell you in a moment about our growth plans. The brands at the moment, we've got 4 brands, and we've got 2 core brands. So we've got the Tycoon brand, which is our casual offering, our more casual offering, and we have 6 premium Thai restaurants, which are larger, higher spend per head, at the top end of the market, called under the Chow Paya name. So there are 2 core brands, the Tycoon and the Chow Paya brands. We've got 6 of each of those, and the remaining 3 of those, we have 2 what we call Chow Babies. It's the Chow Baby is as the name might suggest, is this diminutive version of the Chow Paya. It's a buffet concept one in Meadowhall in Sheffield, the other in the Trafford Centre in Manchester, and then we've got a Lone Ranger called Yira, and we've got some exciting plans for that. So I think people will get to know more about that brand in due course as well. But that's how we're structured at the moment.
That's great. So when did you join the company? And obviously I think it was late last year where it got announced that you took the managing director role, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of history here. I mean, I'm not from the sector originally, and I got to know Martin and Kim, the joint owners of the company, actually a year before they opened the first restaurant, which was Chow Paya Leeds. We opened that in 2004, and I got to know them in 2003. And so I've felt an affinity with the brand right from its inception and followed the journey. I came on board 5 years ago as a group operations director, and then I was delighted last year when Martin and Kim decided, as part of a restructure, that they'd like me to take this role. So that's how things have evolved. I feel in my heart that I hope for Martin and Kim it was the natural choice, because I've spent so much time with them and with the company. I carry a bit of each of them in my heart. Martin's a very well-organised, well-disciplined business person, and Kim is all the emotions and inspiration of the business, really. And I think those 2 things, if I can harness those 2 things in the best I can, I think that's what I can give for the company, and I can make sure they have an enduring influence in the business in that way.
That's really interesting, and I think having met both of those characters, I think that it's really interesting how you describe both of them, because I think that dynamic obviously has really helped in terms of getting them to this point, but your job is very much about moving this forward and moving it into a bigger brand that continues to roll nationally. Yeah,
I'm really passionate about this, that we preserve the core of what we are, and then we're constantly stimulating progress, but we must not lose sight of what we are as a brand. I was at a recent management development programme with our managers in Manchester, and one of my colleagues asked the team there, who is your greatest inspiration in life? And 3 of the managers actually cited Kim, our owner, as their inspiration, which I think is remarkable. Normally there's someone in the past who, in hindsight, you realise inspired you, but she's a living inspiration for our brand. Her rags to riches story is unbelievable. It's a difficult story to digest without feeling some sort of tingling in your spine. It's an amazing story, from absolute abject poverty to the wealth she has today, and all along the way her humility is something that we all look up to. So, and then that needs to be carried on. I mean, they're still in the business and they're still very much involved, but not from a day-to-day point of view. So when we're speaking to chefs, where Kim has historically always been very, very close, I want to speak to them in the way that Kim has. And when we're talking to our managers, we call them business managers rather than general managers. When I'm talking to our so-called BMs, I want to make sure that I harness everything that Martin's always stood for, which is an eye on the numbers as well as on all the soft factors as well. So It's a great place. It's a brilliant job. I love this business. It's just brilliant.
If we were to be sitting here at the end of January 2017, how many sites would you be talking about having, and what's the growth plan, I suppose, between now and then?
Well, I hope very much that January 2017 we'll be able to say we have 22 sites. We've got 4 or 5 of those nailed on already, so we'll certainly be in a different place. And every time we open a new site, we add roughly 45 people to the employee base, and we add another couple of £1 million to the sales turnover and a bit more EBITDA, obviously. So that's the plan. We hope we're currently doing 30 million. We're going to. It's the biggest year of expansion, so we're effectively adding nearly a half onto the business, and we've geared up for growth. We've got an openings team in place. Historically, we've pulled people from different corners of the business and pulled them together for an opening. But when we've got 8 openings, pretty much back to back, we've brought people out and backfilled those roles. There's no person in the openings team who's come from outside. They're all people who've managed and operated in our sites. The first restaurant of this year is opening in March in the Metro Centre in Newcastle. The next one will be opening in Guildford, and there may be a little swap between numbers sites 3 and 4, but further down the pipeline we've got Aberdeen, another chap hire. Those other 2 are tycoons. We're opening in Leicester as well, and maybe I can reveal on here that we've also got Bath. So we're very excited, and you'll see from if anybody who knows our geography will see that this is we're moving outwards with our brand. We're getting more of a UK footprint. Our mission, our secret mission, is to own Thai in the UK. So stop a person on the street, tap them on the shoulder, and ask them about Thai food, or for that matter, just Thailand. And I hope that we'd feature in their ensuing discussion as somewhere they'd think of.
One of the things I think always strikes me when talking to your colleagues from Thai Leisure Group is that you're a brand that started in the north. And I remember back to an ALMR event sometime last year, I believe, actually, it might have been the year before, where there was a big debate on whether innovation is always driven out of London. And I think that it was quite an interesting conversation and became rather jovial as you'd expect. But one of the things that came out during that event was actually that with increasing prices in London and all of the issues we know with real estate in London, that actually innovation is now being driven out of other places, and a place that was named at that point was Manchester. So from a brand that was born in the north, I suppose first question, why are you not in London yet? And secondly, why do you think that's helped you in terms of developing a brand and growing it across the UK?
Yeah, I think we've had to deal with lots of little markets in different parts of the country, and we've inherently become very flexible and very open-minded in our thinking. And I think that typifies us as a business, actually. We don't necessarily have set role models. I don't think, of course, we read and listen to all many good items and best practice, and we're constantly soaking that up. But I think we have the courage of our own convictions, and I think we dare to be different, and that probably comes from our owners, who are inherently very independent people and who haven't been brought up as restaurateurs. Kim is from the heart, as I've just explained before, and Martin is, believe it or not, was running a power tools company before. We weren't born into a stable as such. In terms of the evolution's been very natural. It started off on the doorstep of Martin's house, or Martin's home city of Leeds, and when that worked, the next thing was to look down the M62 at Manchester, and then a little bit further towards Liverpool, and then we started looking a little bit wider and looking further north and south. So there's not been a conscious decision. That said, the last few years, the last 2 years specifically, we've really wanted to make sure we have a presence in London. I think I think it's a fifth, isn't it, of all the restaurants in the UK are in London. Obviously, something like a quarter of the population are down here. We know if we want to be a UK brand, have UK brands, a national presence, we need to be here. So we have been looking at sites, and we've not been successful with a few bids, and probably in more cases than that, we've backed out of bids. the premiums are such that we are a little bit cautious when it comes to making these decisions, and we're fairly confident in terms of how we operate in the provinces. If you do the maths, it looks as though there's plenty going on outside, but we're not scared to come into London at all. And in fact, my own personal view is it may actually be easier to operate one of our restaurants in London than it is in a place like Manchester or Liverpool, where you've got to be able to show yourself to be able to build up a very strong, loyal customer base. I think it's much more transient in London. And whilst people say it's unforgiving, the one thing is for sure, you're going to get a different set of customers next week to the one you had this week. Not that we intend or anticipate any errors or problems, but it's a robust market, and we've got a good product, so we're confident.
That's cool. If we go back to one of the first comments you made, you've moved into this role from outside the sector, but you have been 5 years in the sector now. I suppose thinking to your time outside the sector, and I know that you've got quite an interesting background, what learnings do you think you've been able to bring to this role, and what's the kind of view on the wider hospitality space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm always intrigued by how long it takes to become regarded as being from the industry. I think no matter how long I lived and how long I was in here, I'd always be, quote, not from the industry. Does that mean, I don't know what the defining part of your career is. I was a waiter at one point, many years ago, when I was a student, so I am type of from the industry. Maybe I haven't gone through the management levels, and that's the factor. My background is engineering, and then I made an odd career turn and ended up working in professional sport with professional football and rugby clubs. So I came on board with a very different bunch of perspectives, and I think that's the important thing here. I think there's all sorts going on, and it's obviously a very creative sector. People need to think in new ways, in fresh ways all the time. And I think if you're not from the sector, you might not be limited by the sector's thinking. And I mean, it's a very broad. It is a broad church, but I think you can really come at it from the left field if you're not from the sector. So
is that a football pun?
Yeah. It certainly is. I try and avoid level playing fields and all this if I can, but I do slip into it. But I'll give you an example. Actually, we did a management training course at a recent management meeting in Glasgow. I thought I would share with my colleagues some of the thinking that does come from football, and I had a few slides on each of these, and some simple concepts really resonated with them. And I was told afterwards they'd never heard some of these things before. And it's a simple thing. I mean, they're cliches of sport. The leader is the one with the ball. I love that one. And I love that principle. It's not about a hierarchy. It's the person who is vested with the responsibility of decision making is the person who's got the greatest control. And that's a football and rugby principle. And then another thing very big in sport is the principle of the controllables and the uncontrollables. And you only work on the controllables and take your mind out of the uncontrollable space. And all this sort of stuff is great, and I love all that. But more importantly, I think there's a different way of thinking, and I hope that what I've brought to this business is, and this goes further back in my career in terms of engineering, is a sort of a belief that it's all about people, but it's also about connecting people and structure. And an engineering mind might be a little bit more structured. And I wouldn't profess to being hugely well structured, but I know the importance of connecting those things together. And in an empowered organisation, which is I'm absolutely passionate about, that we give lots of responsibility, we give lots of freedom, and we cut the rules. The few rules that are there have to be really, really well defined and well organised. So I hope that's an engineering thing that I've brought to bear. And we're constantly looking for people from outside the sector. My good colleague Christian Hall, who's the commercial and finance director, he's not from this sector either. And I know that people think, there are two people, two members of the senior management team who are not from the sector, and his background will help us in our growth plans. He's seen a company grow from a few £1 million to over £100 million in a very short space of time. His background was high tech, and we talk often about our backgrounds and about how we can help mould things in this business. So we've got generalists, we've got specialists, and we have some interesting discussions.
I'm sure. I think that's probably all we've got time for, looking at the clock here. But I do want to say thank you for your time, and it's obviously a very interesting journey you're on, and all the best of luck for the next year.
Thanks, James. Great talking to you. Thank you.